Hello, welcome to Reel Film Snobs. I'm Angela Yeager. I'm pleased to have with me back on the show once again my good friend Chris Andresen. Welcome to the show, Chris.
Hi, Angela.
And Chris and I are going to review all new movies. Yay! It's that time of year again. It's Oscar time. That's what I like to say. Well, it's been the Oscar time for a while, but I feel like it kind of started late this year. I feel like October was a little slow, and then all of a sudden everyone started releasing everything in November.
Yeah, that seems like a lot all at once.
Yeah. And so we're going to review four brand new movies that have been either in theaters recently or yeah, at least here in Salem, Oregon. For some of you big city folks, they might have come out a little earlier, and some of these might even be close to either video streaming or on demand. But we'll do our best to get through these. So we've got good mix too, I think. We've got a war movie, a stop motion anime, and two character dramas. So I think it's a nice mix for that time of the year. So I'll kick it off with our first film, which is Memoirs of a Snail by Adam Elliot, whose previous film, Mary and Max, was another stop motion delight. This one is another stop motion film by Adam Elliot that follows the trials and tribulations of a lonely misfit named Grace Puddle. But you can't come up with a better English name than that, right? Or British, I should say. From her childhood to her adulthood and her many, many, many misfortunes. This is not a kid's stop motion animation. I will just put that right up there. This is for adults. This is for grown-ups. Like other Adam Elliot films I've seen, it's dark. And in this one, I think this one more even darker than I expected based on the trailer, to be honest. There's some really heavy duty stuff that goes on in this film. Yeah, I guess it's a good one. If you're feeling sorry for yourself, go see this one because a lot happens to Grace. That's not the greatest things. I actually wrote in my Letterboxd review, like, I don't know what's going on in Australia, what's in the water there, but I literally, every film I ever have seen from Australia, with the exception of maybe Muriel's Wedding, they don't do light very well, you know. They're a dark people, the Australians, and this one is also very dark. I love the stop motion animation. I love that style. Anyway, obviously, if you've seen the opening of our show, I'm a fan of stop motion, and this one does it really, really well. There's also some great voice work here, particularly by Sarah Snook and Cody Smith-McPhee as the two leads, Grace and her brother, her twin brother. Who she is tragically separated from for a good chunk of their childhood. So I'm curious to hear what you thought of it, Chris.
Well, I guess maybe it was my mood, but I didn't find it that dark. I mean, yes, it's dark, but I also thought it was funny and even uplifting at moments. And what I felt a lot when I was in this film was just that this is the kind of film that makes me glad that I prioritize going out to movie theaters, because seeing it with other human beings and, you know, listening to their reactions and my reactions. So like we were all shocked at the shocking moments, and we would be laughing at the funny moments, and of course sad and loving, you know, feeling all those feelings. And I think it's one of the few films I can remember where people actually clapped at the end and stayed for the whole end credits. Like
Oh, wow.
people didn't really want to leave
I
the
should have
theater.
gone to the screening you went to because I went to a late night one, same theater, and I did not have a good audience. I had a chair kicker behind me that I had to move that were being really obnoxious through the whole movie, and nobody laughed. I was the only one. I mean, some of it's pretty bawdy, especially my favorite character, the older lady. I
Oh my
just
gosh,
loved
she's
her.
great. She's
And
really great. Yeah.
and during her scene where they show her stripping, I was laughing so hard, and I was the only one laughing. And I was like, "What is wrong with the people in my auditorium?" So you must have gotten a good batch of people.
Well, and maybe it is audience dependent in that way, you know, but I loved the level of details, like all of the little bits that show up in the opening credits that, you know, become part of the story as you're watching. You're like, oh, there's that thing, and just all the details in the background. Like I kept trying to think like what is the word to describe this kind of stop motion because it's not lush because that's not the right word, but
Mm-mm.
it's like the opposite of whatever simple would be. Like there's so much detail and kind of abundance
There's a
in.
lot going on. It reminds me in a
Yeah,
way of a stop motion version of a Wes Anderson film in that there's so many little details packed into, like even in her apartment, every little thing on the wall,
yeah,
because her whole wall's covered with snails, and so you know how in Wes Anderson films it's like set designed within an inch of its life. Like he's got so many things in the background crammed in that it went on your 10th viewing you're like, oh wait, I didn't notice that before. This is kind
yeah.
of like that.
And I found that part very cool, and I love that he dedicated it to his mom, which he called sort of, I think he called her a semi-hoarder, because there's some hoarding happening in this thing too.
Right.
So much happening. I mean, it was a lot. For a little film, it was a lot. I enjoyed it. I'm glad I saw it.
No, I
And I
enjoyed it
watched that
too.
in
I
a
did,
theater.
and I did find it darker, I think, than you did. I think it was my mood. I wasn't in a great headspace when I saw it, um, and so maybe that was part of the problem. Because as it went on, I was like, "Oh my gosh, what else is going to happen to this poor woman?" And then more happens, and then but it's not all dark, like you said,
Oh,
and
some
I'm
very
trying not
funny
to give
stuff.
away the ending, but it's not all dark. I'll just say that.
Yeah,
So
yeah, yeah.
apparently, it's semi-autobiographical, or loosely inspired by the director's own life. So maybe but mixing up different parts, like you said, his mom is kind of a hoarder. The character is a hoarder. Yeah, she also meets a man who she thinks is the love of his life, and
Gosh.
then he's a really funny character. And I won't give away
Yeah,
his thing, but that was also a little bit of a surprise. I didn't see that coming, I have to
yeah,
admit.
lots of fun twists and turns, I think, in this little
I know.
film.
I knew there was going to be something. I'm like, because this film is so dark. I thought it's not going to be. There's something going to be wrong with him, but I didn't. I have to admit, I didn't know where it was going. So I'm giving this 3.5 stars.
Yeah, I just like all the stars. I wanted to have all the stars, whatever your rating system is, all the thumbs, all the stars. I really,
Okay, you're going to give it 4 then. Okay, so I'll give. I'll. Okay,
I struggle with the stars, as you know. So
yes, you're just like all the stars. I
all the
give it
stars,
all
whatever
the
all
stars.
is.
Okay, okay, okay. Well, we
All
should
right.
move. We'll move on.
Yeah. Our next film is Blitz, which is written, produced, and directed by Steve McQueen, who's known for films like Shame and 12 Years a Slave, and a movie that you and I differ on, Widows. I don't hate it, but I didn't love it. But he also made that really terrific Small Acts short film series that I can't
Oh,
remember where it's streaming, maybe Prime. But anyway, doesn't matter.
fantastic series.
People should look for it if they have not seen it. But Blitz is a World War II drama set in London during the long-term German bombing, and it stars Saoirse Ronan as a single mother raising her son George, who's like this amazing little actor, Elliot Heffernan, I think. Along with help with her father. And so she is reluctantly sending her son away to keep him safe during the Blitz. But they had this kind of inopportune quarrel, and he didn't want to go, and so they didn't leave on good terms. And so about halfway through, George defiantly jumps off the train and decides to make his way back to his mother and grandfather. And so the story just really travels in time between the war and Rita's past when she met George's father. It's a sort of subtle plot line or storyline that George is the result of a biracial relationship. It's not given a lot of discussion by any of the characters. So we see the scene where Rita basically loses the father to an act of violence. And we see little George, of course, being taunted for his biracialness in the film. But essentially, it's sort of two quests. Rita trying to find her son George when she's aware that he's disappeared, and George trying to get back to her and encountering all kinds of characters and danger and things like that. So I really liked this film. My heart broke every time something horrible happened to one of the characters that George encountered along the way. It's a very interesting film in terms of how it moves in time, some of the kind of artistic visuals that it's trying to do, although I'm not sure all of those worked for me, but I was appreciating that it was trying to do something. But the only thing that threw me off was that one character, Harris Dickinson. He's like a neighbor, and it's like maybe he was a childhood friend, and he clearly has some kind of crush on.
Saoirse, yeah.
Yeah, but I just couldn't understand why he kept popping. I don't know. I'm not sure what his purpose was, but I was so taken by most of everything else that I sort of thought, okay, whatever.
I know. He's the one, and he's a great actor. We've seen him in a
Oh,
lot. He's
yeah,
gorgeous, right? So, and he's going to
yeah.
be in that Baby Girl movie coming up with Nicole Kidman where they get all hot and steamy. So I was like, is he just here for eye candy? But that doesn't even make sense because he's like dirty all the time because he's like helping out with the war effort, right? So yeah, his character makes absolutely. It was almost like they were just like, oh, Harris Dickinson has to be in every British movie, so we'll stick him in this one too because he's
Well,
in like four
he's nice
films
to
the last
look
couple of
at.
years. Because he was in
Yeah.
Iron Claw, last year. But yeah, he's just in so much that I was like, is that why he's here? I don't know. But luckily it's not too distracting. I just found that annoying more than anything because that doesn't really go anywhere. He's got a crush on Saoirse Ronan, but she's clearly not interested in him like that. It's interesting that this movie, probably more so than any Steve McQueen film, has gotten lower reviews from a lot of critics. I think they expect him to always be more experimental, and this is not very experimental. It's a really traditionally kind of told war story with a few Steve McQueen, touches, as you
And some
mentioned.
of the visuals, maybe,
Yeah,
but
the visuals, but I think that's okay. He just wanted to tell a straightforward narrative and tell it his way. But I think what to me was really powerful, besides the beautiful photography, I have to give a shout out. Like the cinematography is, see it on the big screen if you can, because Blitz it's absolutely gorgeous. But what really, I thought the two stories of the mom and the boy happening concurrently was not distracting, as some critics thought. I thought it was actually beautiful because that you have him going on this journey, basically, as a kid through war-torn England to get back to his mother, and then her kind of, working at the factory, doing her thing, and then also once she realizes he's missing, then searching for him. I didn't find any issue with that. What I also loved was that McQueen does bring a different flavor because we've seen so many British World War II movies, right? I mean, I can't even list the amount I've seen. A lot. It's a big focus, a period for British films, but I've never seen it from this perspective, from the racial perspective of this boy encountering during a period where they're fighting the Nazis. Literally, he's still, encountering racism every almost every step of the way, but also some really good people too. So there's a hopeful era, element to it. But McQueen's reminding us that even while people are fighting fascists, they're some of the same hatred that fueled the Nazis is happening actively against some of their own people in England. And I thought that was really powerful. And it doesn't hit you over the head with that. It's just this
no,
theme that
it's
runs
subtle, I
through
think.
as George is, going on this journey. Some people are very kind to him, and some people are not so kind. And it feels a little bit like a fable in parts, especially with the characters he meets on the way they kind of drift out of his life. The one person who's kind of a watchman, or I think he's
Oh my gosh, he's amazing.
on guard, yeah. And then the band of thieves that seems a little Dickensian there. I kept thinking of Oliver, and this band of thieves who steal objects off of the dead during the war, and he gets wrapped up in that for a while, and then he moves on. So you're not with them for very long. I loved that. So.
Yeah, I didn't find the jumping around in time distracting at all. I thought that it was quite interesting, actually, and it kept you very engaged with both of them, actually, in this idea that in some ways they're somehow moving closer and closer together. So,
Yeah, yeah. So I recommend it. Saoirse Ronan, of course, she's one of these. Everything she does, people rave about her, and she is terrific here, and she sings. So,
yeah.
she's got a good voice. She should do a musical someday.
On top of everything else, yeah.
Yeah, she could sing. What can't she do? So yeah, a great film, and yeah, I really liked it. Of course, I'm a big Steve McQueen fan, including the great movie Widows. It's okay, you're allowed to be wrong once in a while, Chris. But he's done so many other great films: Hunger, Shame, 12 Years a Slave, and then now this one. And yeah, it's not as experimental, but it's okay. He's allowed to do that.
Right.
Filmmakers want to try different things. So anyway, let's move on to our next one because I want to make sure we talk about this one because I'm very
That's right.
excited.
So, our next film is A Real Pain, which is sort of also kind of a war movie, but not really. I mean, it's a Holocaust.
It's a whole.
Yeah, it's a Holocaust story, unlike Holocaust stories maybe that we usually see, which take us back to that time. And I think it was really interesting. It's written, produced, and directed by Jesse Eisenberg, and I think this is maybe his second film that
Hmm.
he's written and directed. I have to say, I didn't love his first film, When You Finish Saving the World. And that one might have been a lot about the mood I was in when I watched it. But, obviously he's got a long history as an actor. And I think the actorliness must show as he's a director in this film. But essentially, the film is about two cousins. You've got David, played by Eisenberg, and Benji, played by Kieran Culkin, who decide to take part in a Holocaust tour in Poland to honor their late grandmother and to visit her childhood home. And we learned very quickly that the cousins were close at one time, but have been maybe distant for a while. So this trip is also a chance for them to reconnect. And so this is kind of I would say, spare film. It's a terrific little film. They tell us kind of information about characters in very simple ways, so it doesn't take us very long to understand that Eisenberg is a, type A
Hmm.
personality, kind of tightly wound, and that Benji, his cousin, is maybe a little bit unreliable. Like the Eisenberg character leaves him like 45 messages. It feels like, are you going to get to the airport? Don't be late to the airport. On and on and on.
Hmm.
And so, anyway, just very interesting things about the characters and the group that they encounter on the tour. I found it really interesting that these are not. This is like a Holocaust story told not from the perspective of Holocaust survivors, but not even their children, but their grandchildren. So we're sort of three generation or a couple of generations removed from the experience. They're on a tour, to experience these locations, to learn facts. And the Benji character at one point reacts that it's not a very emotional experience. And that's sort of interesting too. There's so much happening in terms of the personalities of these two characters and the things that are revealed along the way and why they're not so close anymore and how their lives have taken different directions. And I just found it so interesting that we sort of start the film and end the film in exactly the same way. Like there's sort of interesting
Hmm.
circularity about it. But anyway, yeah, I really liked this film a lot, and I am very curious to know what you found or thought about it.
Oh, I love this movie. A real shock, actually. I didn't see it at Sundance because it was there and it was one of the big talked about movies, which often the talked about movies at Sundance are not the ones I actually like the most. So this one was, in a way, I went in thinking it wasn't going to be as good as it actually was. Because I saw it in the theater, I didn't see it at Sundance. I love this movie so much. It's up there for probably one of my top favorites of the year. I think in part because it took me by surprise. I did not see Eisenberg's first film. It got very muddled reviews, unlike this one. I think what
Muddled a good
surprised
word.
me was how all of these characters felt in a very short amount of time. This is the rare movie that's under 2 hours. So there's a conciseness to the editing here where Eisenberg, but you immediately feel like you know these people. I know people like Benji. We have people like Benji in our lives. The unreliables who are also dynamic in their personality, and people are drawn to them. And they're always late. They say inappropriate things, but then people forgive them because, you
They're
know,
charming.
they're
Yeah.
charming. And I do feel like Benji, he's struggling obviously with some mental health issues. I feel like his character probably has some ADHD, some other stuff going on. And then also the Eisenberg character, he's struggling with some stuff. I identified with him personally. He's like the type A, the woundly knit, worried about things all the time. But their friendship, but then also the tour group. I actually really liked the Jennifer Grey character. I really
Mhm.
liked the tour guide. He isn't, he has some really amazing moments where there's a scene where he takes Benji aside after Benji had criticized the way he did the tours, and he said, "I haven't been able to stop thinking about what you said." And Benji's like, "What's that? What did I say?" And he's because he just drops these things. He has no filter, right? He drops these
Maybe
things
no
on
memory.
people, and he drops these things on people, and they can't stop thinking about it. And he's already moved on. The same thing with Jesse Eisenberg's feet. He tells him early on, "You have beautiful feet," and Jesse Eisenberg's like, "Really?" And now he can't stop looking at his feet. And I bet Benji doesn't even remember he told him that. So it's a very, very funny movie. It has this Holocaust background, but I think it's more about these specific characters. And yeah, you have this generational trauma they obviously did not experience. They're living in this modern world where they're so separated from that kind of trauma is almost hard for them to understand. But they have their own kind of issues that they're dealing with that are very much related to the here and now. And I just loved this movie. I wish more people would have gone out and seen it. So.
Well, I'm hoping people will catch it on streaming because I think, I'm hoping the Eisenberg name will get people to at least take a look at it. But and Kieran Culkin because he's been getting a lot of recognition for is it Succession?
Succession, yeah. And don't let that, I talked to my parents were like, "Oh, his character's terrible in Succession." Yeah, he's not funny. He's not unlikable in this one. So he's an actor. It's a totally different character.
True. And I haven't watched that series. I also really appreciated the Rwandan character.
Oh yeah, I forgot to mention that was great.
A more recent genocide and has converted to Judaism. He's quite a powerful part of that group. I mean, that whole group and the stuff with things on trains. I mean, this whole idea of the role of trains during the Holocaust and these tours being on trains and there's just a lot going on. And I think this film is just barely over 90 minutes. Like you said, it's very tight and so well edited, and there's so much detail in that 90 minutes. Like I couldn't believe it was over when it was over because it was just so much happening.
Yeah, I almost felt like it could have gone a little longer, honestly, which is the way you want to leave people. We'll talk about in our next film a little bit about my problem with films getting too long. And because there's no such thing as a too long film if the film warrants that length, and if it's great and it has the stuff, the substance to fill that time. Most films don't. This film, A Real Pain, almost left me wanting a little bit more at the end. I was like, oh, I want to see what's going to keep happening. And plus we had different theories. Like my husband thought, he went and saw this with me, that maybe Benji was like living at the airport because it was really odd that because he stays there. And then at the beginning when Eisenberg, he had been texting him like, because he's so worried that Benji's going to be late. And then Benji had just been like hanging out at the airport all day.
Who knows how long, yeah.
And we don't know. And he had a warm yogurt in his pocket. In
that way it kind of felt to me a little bit like a play because you had sort of this opening scene where you can imagine a character on a stage come in, you're already in it, and then this thing happens, and then the character's there and you're out of it, but the character continues. So in some ways it felt like, because Benji continues, the movie never ends, sort of thing. So
right.
But I don't know that I thought he was living in the airport, but that's a good theory. I like that theory.
I didn't really think that either, but it also leaves it up to your imagination, which is a sign of a good film to a certain degree. So yeah, this one's 4 stars for me. So
I think all the stars for this one.
All the stars too. Okay. So we'll move on to our next film, Anora from 2024 by one of my favorite filmmakers, Sean Baker. People have heard me rave about him so much on this show. They're probably sick of it. But I am a huge fan. And so I had high expectations going into this movie, which may be one of the issues. It did win the Palme d'Or at the Cannes Film Festival. It was kind of a big surprise, actually, that it won because, obviously a lot of international films compete at Cannes. American films don't win that often, honestly, because it's a French film festival. But so Anora is about a young sex worker from Brooklyn, played by Mikey Madison in a terrific performance, who meets and impulsively marries this doofus guy who's the son of a Russian oligarch. And when I say he's a doofus, I mean he's a doofus of like a grade A plus doofus. But once the news reaches his parents in Russia that their darling son has gone off and married a sex worker, things start to go really, really awry. This movie has the structure of a screwball comedy. And the reason I'm bringing that up is because the screwball comedies, particularly those of the 30s and 40s, are one of my favorite type of movies. And one thing they did so well with screwball comedies is they kept them short and tight, because you want a screwball comedy to just almost make you feel breathless because they keep going. There is the middle section of this movie, to me, is the best part of the movie.
Oh, by far.
Because it is nonstop. Once the gangsters show up, and tie up Anora and go on this quest and I kind of have to, basically the husband kind of runs out once the gangsters show up. They're not really gangsters. They're like paid hoods, if you will. Yeah, paid ruffians, but from the Russian family, show up to basically try to, get them apart. He leaves and then they spend the night searching for him. And that's the screwball comedy aspect. And it's very funny and it's very good. My issue with this movie, and it's gotten so many rave reviews that I feel weird I feel like that Sean Baker winning the Palme d'Or was a makeup for him not winning for Florida Project, which in my opinion is his masterpiece, along with Tangerine. But those two films, 4-star films, go see them. This film I liked, but I didn't love. So go ahead, Chris. I'll let you talk about it for a bit because I have a lot to say.
Yeah, no, it's too long. It's too much.
Mhm.
I really like the Mikey Madison character and the actress playing Anora. That Mikey Madison is the actress playing Anora, and she's awesome, and the portrayal is great. The second section is really fun, I think, because like you said, where the heavies show up to try to fix things, they aren't all that interested in harming her. And
No.
so they're just trying to solve a problem. And sometimes they get more hurt, physically than she does, or just stupid things, happen to them. But there was even a moment where I was like, okay, we can't go to another bar or another restaurant like that. It's like
It just keeps going. Yeah,
how
yeah.
many places do we need to show you in this location to make you understand that we're filming in this location and this film is of this location? So
Right. They filmed in the Brighton Beach area, which does have a heavy Russian population, so I appreciate the authenticity.
yeah. It has a little bit of a predictable, not totally romantic ending, but kind of romantic. And the audience I saw it with, I think they were not on board until there was a group of young people in front of me, and I think they were sort of like, "Oh, it's okay," because she ends up living happily ever after with that other
Although I
character.
don't know that that's actually what was going on at the end there.
Yeah, I didn't read it that way, but I think that's what maybe some audiences are. That's
Right.
like a happy ending that some audiences maybe are looking for. But yeah, I loved Florida Project. I loved Tangerine, and so I feel like his films are kind of appointment. Filming. You go. You're always going to go see anything he produces, and I appreciate that he does really, Sean Baker does really interesting films. But yeah, this will not be my favorite of them,
No,
unfortunately.
it's with a few. I think it's the first film of his I've given 3 stars to, probably since one of his very early films, because even Red Rocket I liked a lot more than this one, which wasn't my favorite film of his, but I think still has it really works. And the length is a big problem with this. Sean Baker's films used to be like 90 minutes, less than 2 hours. This one's 2.5, and it easily needed 30 minutes trimmed. I think also the arc of where Anora's character goes. I didn't buy the ending. I didn't like it. I didn't necessarily think it worked. I also have to say that her character is so street smart and
Mm.
so savvy that one of the issues, and I saw it with a friend, and we both talked about this afterwards, that she would think that this guy, who is obviously just, quite honestly, a doofus, like I said, he's a doofus, because this guy that she marries, that she thinks
Young.
this
He's
this
super,
kid,
super young.
this
Yeah.
kid, because he is a child, he's 21, but he's a child mentally, that he
Mhm.
is serious about marrying her, that this is going to be a substantial relationship. I didn't buy it because I don't think she's stupid enough. The character is not stupid. Honora is not a stupid person, and I felt like she, and I get that she's trying to delude herself, but I had a really hard time connecting that with her actions and with how she's like, especially when they find him again, and she's like, "Baby, what's wrong?" And I'm just like, "Oh, come on, lady, this guy, he's a 12-year-old in a 21-year-old body, he just wants to play video games, get stoned, and have sex. That's all he's interested in."
I'm not even sure what order those things fall. I mean, yeah, he's super immature. I kept thinking like, well, this is why insurance companies make young men pay more money because
Yeah.
this guy is an idiot.
Yes.
And I kept thinking like, she's hanging out and he's got the game controller and she's trying to snuggle in. There were just so many moments where I thought, this guy's not worth your time. There's no amount of money in the world worth putting up
No,
with this.
no.
So,
And
yeah.
let's face it, like he is he yeah, he's like it's like being married to a junior hire. So I know we're out of time, but I want to oh, the alarm went off for the show, so I better wrap it up. Okay, so Chris gives all the stars, I think, to all the movies except for maybe Anora.
Yeah, not in.
So yeah, so 3 stars for Anora. But thank you for being on the show, Chris. I appreciate you. I appreciate getting to review these movies. As always, go to our website, subscribe to our YouTube channel. Thank you to our wonderful sponsors. Have a great day and great movies.